So these are just day-to-day operations of the art operation at the end of spring. I'll be doing a retrospective, not necessarily on video. I've already begun looking at all the archives of the last years, last 20 years, 30 years, even 40 years. Found old drawings from when I was a kid. It's all very good. I innovated. I have a new card sorting station. It's very useful because like here, like I have stuff from 2016, about almost exactly 10 years ago, about the Archives project, about the novel, the phenomenology of the novel, the novelistic phenomenology, more cards, where I was writing about the stars and like a lot of astrophysics and cosmology or whatever. Been going through the archives, like I said. I showed a video earlier. Like I'll take old folders from the cabinets. When I find like stapled writings like this, these are stapled. I can tell from the handwriting how I was feeling. I can tell pretty much everything. I remember my memories, my autobiographical memories, like superior. You know, I don't remember like what I was wearing because that's irrelevant to me. But I remember pretty much everything, all the references, all the emotions, all the thoughts, especially the thoughts. But there's periods where it gets really difficult, and I get kind of disorganized because I'm working so fast, and I make mistakes, accounting errors. You know, I don't do all the troubleshooting. I don't always go through the entirety of the argument. You know, I try to. So then later I have to go and sort of do this repair work. See, I have a taxonomy for field recordings. It's an old thing. You know, you got like human sounds, non-human sounds, organisms, natural physical processes. So I used this is like classification of algorithms. You know, I was looking at evolutionary programming. That's if the search space is predictable. Those are evolutionary techniques, non-deterministic optimization, and search techniques. I try to invent the algorithms as I go along. So what I found in the archives was a lot of music that I've been putting online, a lot of documents. I opened them up. I took my novel, I wrote a novel like over 500 pages, but the history project, basically I called it Crackland and the Crackland Journals, or Structure of 11, but really it was the history project that I never really finished, and I realized my novels were too big, like in the scope and scale. Like I'd invent like a design concept for a novel, a novelistic phenomenology, a simulation novel as a system, you know, and then like I couldn't, because you got to sit down and write. So I'll give the reference to the person that's talked about the one-dimensional bottleneck of words, you know, like, so I have to actually like write a one-dimensional like narrative of this complex, interconnected like system of these interweaving like conceptual schemes, you know, like a kind of like if you're at a mixing board, like you're mixing tracks, like say like an ambiance or like an atmosphere, and you're like slowly fading one into the other, like phasing them, whatever. So when I'm walking outside in the field, like I take recordings and I like to play around with them. I do experiments. It's ambient experimental sound design. I've been doing that for 30 years. So atmospherics too, like it's all about atmospherics. Like when you read a Virginia Woolf novel, or like E. Cummings' The Enormous Room, like, the author is, these are just random thoughts, like it's on purpose. The author basically is, when I'm writing, it's what I'm feeling, like I'm in harmony with my environment. You can't really write if you're like in the subway, and like, unless you're you have that tranquility inwardly, because writing creatively anyways requires a sort of like perfect, like Aikido master, Tai Chi master, you know, like that inner core, that strength I like to call that point, and like it's like when you're breathing, like you have a point in the center of a circle, and when you exhale, it's like the periphery, the perimeter or whatever of the circle, you know, like when you're walking too, like you can have a point, like your North Star, I call it, like where it's like if I'm going to the Holy Land, like I can't really imagine what that looks like. So I'm a pilgrim, so I'm just walking. I'm in the everyday things, the surfaces, the workspace of the life space, you know. I'm doing work and I'm making my way, you know, slowly moving as a mobile kind of like witness box, I call it. But like, so if you have a point, like you just look at a tree and you see that distance and you just focus on that point, and the closer you get, like, then you find another point later on. It's Edward Salim Michael that taught me all that from his books. He died but a while back. I didn't get to, he died before I knew of his work. But the atmospherics, like I create, like someone said, like, I listen to your atmospheric tone recordings and like I can't hear anything. That's exactly the point. The atmosphere that I created, that I didn't really create it, I recorded it with my field recorder. I chose that specific moment because this was like early in the morning, 5, sometimes 4:30, 4:20 in the morning. I record 2 minutes, that's my atmospheric tone. I know that throughout the day I can go back to get that feeling, that space. It's all about the atmosphere. And like the author who's writing, they have that inward space, and that's what the space is. Like, we'll say I write about, you know, Montreal or whatever, in a certain period in history. Well, I'm actually experiencing that inwardly, that the actual Montreal is not, it's kind of like a metaphor, an allegory for what's going on inwardly. And I think that people, the modernist novels like Virginia Woolf and all that, I don't think people appreciate that idea of the atmospherics of the spaces, you know, like it's an abstract cartography. Like I paint, even now I'm even taking, like, I have these old like map like paper, like for doing maps for Dungeons and Dragons I had when I was a kid. Now I'm doing, like, you know, different mapping out cartographies. Like, so my new novel, The Chronotopium, has like its own cosmology. Like the first 2 of the trilogy was just called The Revolt of Fiction. And it's all about atmospherics. Like, it's the colors, like, see, like the colors of these cards, like this light blue, this light pink, and this light like yellow. Make sure I put it back in the right spot. Those are really important colors. Like those are colors that you see in early morning or in the evening, you know. And it's not the bright colors that people are used to, like this bag, like a bright red, you know. Like, I never use that color in my paintings. Like, I use very soft colors, even like in this portrait that I made, like the soft color of the skin and of the lips, and even the hair. My hair is darker, but those light colors are important. For instance, this is a painting, I'm not sure what to call it. I did that, I think it was 2009. It's like, it looks dirty and all that, but it's really like carefully mixed colors. There's cigarette butts, and that's on purpose. This is 2004, was a history painting, one of my last for when I lived in Montreal, and then Notre-Dame de Grâce in NDG. That was a revolutionary moment in my history project, you know. There's another history project from a couple of years ago. It's those are all dates of history. There's significant dates, you know, 1812, like 1888, 1907. Those are all critical things happen in those dates. And you have like the structure of the discourse, you know. I've been reading Jean-Paul Sartre's book on Baudelaire. Baudelaire's, I don't know, he's a bizarre character. Like the author, the atmospherics, I think like that's what's lacking, is that sonic thing that I have when I write music. I hear inside my head, basically, in my inner ear. And when I'm walking and composing, I'm the happiest chap in the world. I feel so lucky to have those years. They're like $1 million years, and I can write music. I can write orchestral music, you know, complex like polyphonic works, multiple voices. I can write for guitar, piano, for a band, rock band, whatever. I was influenced in my rock music by my guitar playing by, you know, Led Zeppelin, but also like King Crimson and Sonic Youth. You know, you'd be surprised how much I love them. Even the Jesus Lizard, you know, Pearl Jam when I was like 91, and Nirvana when all those bands came out. That was a big influence on me. But I didn't like playing loud music. I like when I listen to music on my phone, I put it at the lowest level and just let it caress and tickle my ears, you know, and I get the shivers down my spine from the very lowest sound, like the ambient sound, like the atmospheric tone recordings I make in the morning or in the evening, sometimes in the middle of the night. those are important, you know, like you're not supposed to hear anything because the atmosphere, like I was saying, of the space that I recorded with the field recorder mixes perfectly like with your space, your listening space, your 3D like sort of 3D stereo space, you know, of your speakers. It plays and it can have. It's not like all surround sounds, not all around you. You don't have sounds from the speakers. You don't have it at the back of your head, you know. You can't have sounds coming from behind, but in my space there are. But it's like converted into to like 3D kind of. I don't even know if it's 3D, the stereo space. I don't think it's fully 3D. Let's say 2.9, 2.4. Anyways, so the two spaces mix. I call it like a multi-space, and it's like you're listening to a recording inside of a room, inside of a building, inside of a village, inside of a region, you know. It's those nested spaces, but you can do that with atmospherics. And outside when you're walking in the field, like you're hearing like you can actually access, I call it the awakened ear. You can hear like the whole atmosphere, like it's all resonating like a complex resonant like chamber, you know. And it's like I can't hear things like why can't I hear airplanes like at whatever 20,000 feet or whatever they fly at. I hear a helicopter over there, I hear a car over here hundreds of meters, and I can almost hear like Montreal, like this faint, like I study my recordings. I'm going to start analyzing them like scientifically, like through programming, because I learned Python many years ago, over a decade ago. And with AI too, I can make like graphics of like the analysis of like the frequency data and like different things. I could also like do glitch work, I call it, like what's it called? It's not circuit bending, but data bending, where you take like an audio file, a wave file, and you turn it into a text or into an image file, and you do vice versa. I like doing that. I like making like my little noise field square, usually like because those are experiences. Like I realize I'm an intuitionist, like the intuitionism. People won't call it that because you don't really invent the names of your movements, but those are all images. I actually experience those things, and I try to paint it, you know, digitally or in analog, as faithfully as possible to how I experienced it phenomenologically with the sillage and all that, the traces of the scent trails of the events that you experience. And I'll end on this. I have a friend who wanted me to write something about marks, not Karl Marx, but the mark, like in history, like when you see a mark, you know, like things are like time and leaves marks, and time and space constraints too, like constrain you to behave a certain way, to feel a certain way. Like I call it the inward, like, or inner contortionism. You know, like you got to be supple and let the sound go around you and move, and your body, like, just, you don't let go completely, because you got to have that conscious contact, that little bouncing ball, you know, like you're following the sound, you know, and you're inhabiting it, and you're letting it, like, you're immersed in it, you let it soak in. And the hearing, like the awakened ear, like it's about really being aware of the sounds, identifying them. Like you could take the sound of the fridge, it's not on right now, you can tell. No, it's not, but like you could tell the different sounds of the motors and the different whatever. Like they have the sound of the fridge is maybe 5, 6, 7. There's so many sounds because it creates harmonics and overtones. It's a really complex sound, but you could break it down into its constituent parts and recreate them with synthesizers, analog or digital synthesis. And I call that anti-synthesis because it's not a synthesis. I deconstructed the sound to its parts, and it's not like deconstructing text, like in the sense of like Derrida or something. That may be a primitive form of anti-synthesis, but it's different. I bought this little book to write notes. Like it's an agenda, but it's very small, like 4 pages per 4 days per page, or for like per 2 pages, whatever. So the thing about marks, like I thought a lot about it. I did some research. I'm still doing my hyper-reflexive design, sorting through piles of folders there. I go through them, like I sort through them, I deconstruct them. This is another form of anti-synthesis. I'm trying to reduce the size of the archives and throwing out, like recycling a lot of paper, stuff that doesn't need to be in there. Some stuff, like they all stay at different segments of time, like in a Gantt chart, like that. Like you have a little track of one folder. It lasts from this date to that date, and the other ones started at different dates. And I remember the whole archive, like in my head. Like I have a map, like these abstract cartographies, because I actually understood and conceptualized, and I designed it basically. I mean, yeah, I designed it, so I know exactly how the architecture works. The Refcards system, the database arts. It's not just a bunch of crap that I'm spewing out. Like people can be very harsh in their judgments. I guess I could be too, but like, you gotta give someone a break. Like, it's not easy. Like, I have a hard time sometimes, like keeping that conscious contact, like that, following the thread, the Ariadne's thread out of the labyrinth. And I've been going over my old writings. That people said it was incoherent. And I think like it was amazing. It was I won't say genius, but a brilliant writer, like a great writer. I knew exactly how to structure my sentences, my paragraphs, my pages, my chapters. The structures of the books were great. It's just like I come up with a design concept for a novel, and it's too big. Like I was saying, I can't write it all down. Like it takes like so much time. I'd have to go in the woods for 3 months and like just write my novels. So what I decided is I took them all apart, the 500-page one I was talking about. I took it all apart into the segments, which originally they were segments. I still have those segments, and I have the version that I juxtapose them all together, kind of like a cut-up novel. But now I'm going to go through and finish because some of them are just not finished, the segments, the fragments. So I'll finish them, and I'm going to fuse them together and juxtapose them and make them sort of like mix in together, like those atmospherics. Because I realized I was writing about my space, and I've always said that the geology of the workspace, the archaeology of the workspace, the Delta-Workspace, the surfaces, the exposed surfaces, the Delta-Workspaces. The deltas are the changes, the indicators of changing surface, the three-dimensional surface of the workspace. And those are the lands that I create in the cosmology of my novel. Like, so Chronotopium, as I was saying, is going to be like Algorithmogenesis is really the key term. And then for my 2028-2029 period, I'm working on secret projects. I like to do everything in the light, like no secrets, not hide. I document all my methods so it can be reproduced. You can reproduce the experiments yourself, come to the sand. They're paintings and music and words and writing, but it's still experimental, and you can reproduce, you can emulate the style. It doesn't bother me if you do that. I might tell you like, hey, don't copy me, but I was open. I told you to do it. Well, I didn't tell people. I tell people not to do it, but you know what I mean. That's about it. In this book about the decolonized, like, future indigenous person or whatever, or indigenous society, like, it's I think a lot about like my culture as a Quebecois. I work with a lot of Americans, and sometimes I think, like, do they understand like that I'm a Quebecois and like I'm not an American? It's tough. But like, so our history is our history, their history is their history, and then I think like sometimes I think the Quebecois have it bad, but things are changing in the indigenous communities in Canada, especially in Quebec. Like, and we're going into an election season in the fall, and I hope that whoever's in power will do things differently to sort of like to sort of incorporate like marginalized groups into society in a better way, and like a new vision of how to. Because we're going into like almost like a jobless like future, so we have to organize society in different ways. And I think that things are going well, even though there's war and famine and all sorts of things in the world. I think history is just like that. There's winners and losers, and entire peoples get destroyed, and people take their archives, their riches, their treasures, and they put them in museums, and that's a horrible thing. But it's the way it's always worked. As a painter, I think I promote the civic virtues, and I think today I would even say I promote martial virtues, but martial virtues are virtues. It's not like war for profit or whatever. No, there's like honor, like a martial artist has martial virtues. And I think that if you want world peace, people talk about that, or peace locally or whatever, I would just call it harmony, then you have to tap into some of the, you have to have a, there's the fist, you know, the image of the fist is, you know, voluntary action. We're going into a time of action. It's going to take action, not the kind that you think, not like, you know, protesting or whatever. Just you got to design, like Livingry, you know, by Buckminster Fuller. Like you have to design the proper concept or design concept. You have to do your research. You know, you have to do your specification, whatever, your problem statement and your problem solution logs. Like every time you solve something, you document it so that people can use the. That's in my novel too. Archivalist is the personification of the archives, and he like collects all the errors of all time. You know, that being massive database the size of the earth, that's just for errors and failures and documenting that. But then the people have to use that to come up. They have to try some of the solutions, I guess, are logged too and documented, but people have to work through it all the time, try to find the solutions and connect them, because it's all a big mess the way it was constructed at the end of civilization, you know.